Talk about being a dead horse. It is no question, even to die-hard fans of the series, that Final Fantasy XIII had garnered the most mixed reactions out of the modern Final Fantasy games. For most Western audiences, the negatives stem mostly around the game's linearity, convoluted story, underdeveloped villains, and lack of focus in the early hours of the game. And even I, one of the few who actually did like the game, can't deny the totally unnecessary and forced sequelization of the franchise. I mean, seriously, what was the point of Lightning Returns? I mean, I get that sometimes you shoot yourself in the foot every now and then, but you don't shoot yourself in the foot and then try to get the bullet out with a pair of scissors. I mean, you're just doing more damage in the long run, but I digress.
Can you feel it?
Yeah!
We'll use this knife to pry it out. We'll pull it out.
Now we got two.
No.
The point of this video is that for many of the new Final Fantasy fans that were just coming into the series, many, and I mean many, had one major gripe with the game, which even to this day I don't think is completely justified. And that is the hate surrounding the youngest character in the party, Hope Estheim. Hope Estheim gets a bad rep for many things. He's whiny, helpless, selfish, a brat, the list goes on. While definitely not the best character in the group, that goes to my man Zahaz over there, he still gets overlooked and judged unfairly in my opinion. And while I can't, with 100% accuracy, say why this is, I think it's because mainly fans of old series like this have trouble trying to sympathize with children who, for lack of a better word, act like children. And not trying to sound like a douchebag here, but isn't that kind of the point? It's kind of like why fans of Star Trek The Next Generation didn't like the character Wesley, and why Walking Dead fans hate Carl Grimes. While they inherently aren't useless or uninteresting, fans, for whatever reason, see them as insufferable, whiny, immature, precocious, you know, what kids actually are like. Seriously, I've never understood these complaints.
I know this may finish me as an acting ensign, but
Shut up, Wesley.
Now, while I'm not trying to downgrade or outright badger those who dislike the character Hope, I mean, come on, I think people are entitled to their opinions at the end of the day, I honestly believe out of all the playable characters in Final Fantasy XIII, it's actually Hope who has the best character development.
What kind of a moron are you? Shove it up your ass!
Now, before you go get out your pitchforks, please allow me the chance to cover the various complaints and gripes about the character and address them one by one in the video. Now, while I can't cover everything, I can at least hope I can dish out enough information to at least give you a different perspective to ponder on, because, considering the source material, I think I have enough challenge as it is. Oh, and by the way, in case you can't see where this is going, huge spoilers for Final Fantasy XIII, just so you know. So, to begin this video, I think I must preface it by starting with a very, very important disclaimer. I'm going to be using the same excuse a lot, which is, Hope is only 14 years old. I think it's important to begin the video with this because I think it helps explain much of Hope's behavior, especially in the beginning parts of the game. I've seen and read people on both sides of the aisle who either seem to forget this little fact or claim that it's not a valid excuse. My response? Of course it's a valid argument in every sense of the word. Consider the following points. Hope witnesses his mother's death firsthand. Do I even need to go into the details of how traumatizing this is? Even as adults, most of us couldn't imagine losing our parents even from natural causes such as old age. The fact that Hope sees his mother die during an armed conflict even compounds the damage. It was only 24 hours ago during the game's timeline that he and his mother were enjoying the fireworks at Bodum, not knowing that they were going to get purged the very next day. And it's only by analyzing the game's backstory do we see how close they really were as mother and son, and how tragic it was that they were victims of circumstance. And trust me, I'll get into the whole vengeance against Snow thing here in a little while, but suffice it to say, anyone who knows even a little about characterization in literature and other works of art know that we're dealing with someone who is very emotionally vulnerable and not as brave or courageous as his older counterparts. Next point. Shortly after losing his mother, Hope, a 14-year-old, becomes a lessee, which, with the subsequent brand imprinted on his wrist, is what could be considered the real-world equivalent of a slow, unavoidable death. If he doesn't complete his focus, he turns into a mindless monster, and if he does complete it, he essentially goes into a coma and turns into Crystal for God knows how long, all the while having to face the persecution and hostility from the citizens of Cocoon, which forces him to go on the run. Say what you want, it's not a good scenario. Now, you could make the argument that Lightning, Saz, and Snow go through the same thing, having lost a close family member or loved one and then gets branded by the l'Cie, all while not freaking out about it. But up until the party faces Anima in Chapter 2, all the characters know exactly what they're getting into. Hope is the only one who unwillingly gets dragged along, no thanks to Vanille. He never asked for it and simply wanted to avoid the trouble from the beginning. And again, he's 14. I would struggle to find any kid at that age who wouldn't be scared to death of the situation they were in. We have Hope, a seemingly normal child, juxtaposed against people like Lightning and Snow, both skilled soldiers and combat veterans, Saz, an older and wiser man who feels like he has nothing left to lose, and Vanille and Fane, girls who we don't learn until later are citizens of Pulse, an unforgiving tundra of beasts and monstrosities as far as the eye can see. Hope, whether you like him or not, reacts as a normal person of his age would and experience would. Now, considering even these few points, there will be some who believe the whole vengeance against Snow thing dragged on forever, and it arguably is probably the most head-bangingly frustrating thing about the whole game. Well, here's the thing. Yeah, it was. I'm not gonna lie, I think this whole plot could have been done better, at least in execution. But before I get into that, let's explain Hope's exact motivation for doing so. In the beginning, we see Hope's mom volunteer for the Resistance, led by Snow, during the events in the Hanging Edge. Shortly after that, she falls to her death after Snow can't hold on any longer. When Hope finally catches up to Snow in the Pulse vestige, Snow, not knowing who Hope is, continues to act stoic, cocky, charismatic, lucky-go-free, just basically not giving any fucks about what happened shortly before, and for all the people that died during the battle, which he is partially responsible for. Say what you will, that would piss anyone off. I think many of us who experience an untimely death, we want justice, we act irrational, we're angry, we think the world sucks, and most importantly, we want somebody to blame.
I don't think I can take this. I don't think I can take this. I just want to hit somebody till they feel as bad as I do. I just want to hit something. I want to hit it hard.
Here, hit this. Go ahead, Malin. Slapper.
Are you crazy?
Hit her.
Are you high, Clary?
It's during this time that Hope decides to hone in on Snow at this point. Now, as a player, I understood the motivation, but I think it should have been resolved earlier rather than having it culminate all the way it did in Palapolum. Even I started to get annoyed by how much Hope was beating around the bush about it. But despite this, it doesn't change the fact that Hope is seeking a way to ease the pain, to make sense of the anguish he's going through, despite how misguided it may seem. Now, if you were one of the very few who were able to get all the way to Chapter 10 or so, it's all the way until this point that Hope's character arc finally concludes with him basically being the cheerleader of the group. It begins with him partnering with Lightning during Chapter 4, where he starts to come into his own. With Lightning's help, Hope gets used to the rigors of combat and starts to get stronger and mature as a young adult. When he fails in trying to kill Snow, he realizes that nothing he does will bring his mom back, and that he was in the wrong in trying to take it out on Snow. So now, we have a character who started out as a young, scared, helpless boy who grew into a brave, smart, and fiercely determined individual, willing to sacrifice himself for his companions, yet stay optimistic during challenging situations, thus living up to his namesake. In my opinion, Hope represents those who lead simple lives, but unfortunately get thrown into unwelcoming situations, but after taking some time to feel victimized, eventually come out of it stronger than ever. He eventually acts in a way that we, as people, all wish we were able to do, with courage and determination, but yet still stay grounded and relatable. We may be scared, we think it's unfair, we may think the world owes us something, and sometimes we may break down, but we ultimately decide to act in the most charismatic and selfless way possible. It's all up to interpretation, but at the end of the game, this is how I saw Hope.